Turn 1 Soul Ring.
You should get like a big like sticker of Thomas the Tank Engine and just put it on the.
I think I can. I think I can. I think I can.
Maybe I'll do that with the next MacBook because I don't know if this one's long for this world. The other one, I just want the sticker to have the kind of staying power, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
But the sentiment is there, absolutely. Okay, well, Riley's back, so I think that means that we should start the show. This is Turn 1 Soul Ring. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And of course, I'm your boy Riley.
That's right. And today on the show, we're going to be live brewing a commander deck. So this is going to be similar to our Decksplained episodes of yore, but instead of choosing a legendary creature to helm this deck, we'll be using Scryfall's random card generator to give us a card to build around. So it might be a legendary creature, but that doesn't mean it has to be the commander, and chances are it's not going to be a legendary creature because I've been messing around with this thing and you get some trash.
It could also be a basic plains.
It could be. It could be. And you know, that's a blank canvas right there, let me tell you.
Yeah, aggro.
I think for the sake of being fun, we should re-roll if we get a basic land.
No. I think we build aggro.
Okay.
So just like our Decksplained episodes where the two hosts that didn't build the deck make suggestions on cards that the builder of the deck, the brewer of the deck, could add to the deck, we're going to be doing that, each of us, the entire episode. But before we get to that, Eric, how can listeners get in touch with us?
Listeners can find us on Instagram at Turn 1 Soul Ring the podcast. If you want to get in contact with us directly, we do have an email, turn1soulring.thepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us over on YouTube. Type in Turn 1 Soul Ring the podcast to find us the easiest. And if you like the content that we produce, you can also support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/turn1soulring.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's generate that random card. Riley, the honor falls to you.
All
Hit
right.
us up.
Drum roll, please.
Ba-
All right. Well, this should be interesting. We have Simic Guildmage. So Simic Guildmage is a 2/2 elf wizard. It's got 2 hybrid pips of Simic in its mana cost, and it has 2 activated abilities. So for 1 and a green, you can move a +1/+1 counter from target creature onto another target creature with the same controller. And for 1 and a blue, you can attach target aura enchanting a permanent to another permanent with the same controller. So this is spicy.
This is pretty
a
cool.
very interesting card. I got to tell you, I did this about 30 times in my downtime, and I did not get anything this interesting.
Yeah. So like,
Riley's just the lucky one.
yeah,
Yes,
like
he is.
right
I'm glad
off
we chose him.
Right off the bat, I'm thinking like there's a couple different directions we could go. Like there's +1/+1 counters. Obviously, if we wanted to move and manipulate our own +1/+1 counters, or in some niche scenario manipulate somebody else's +1/+1 counters, there's that. But then there's also this aura enchanting. So swapping auras and moving them around could be fun as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking of Enchantress, but that's not really what you want to be doing in Enchantress. You don't really want to be moving your auras around very much.
Yeah, there's usually no benefit.
I feel like we can definitely utilize both of these abilities in a deck.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm immediately thinking of Experiment Kraj
That's
as a
where
commander.
that's where my mind went as well.
Yeah, that's a great commander for this.
It's sort of because so it specifically cares about 1/1 counters. Experiment Kraj is a 4/6 legendary ooze mutant for 2 green and 2 blue. Experiment Kraj has all activated abilities of each other creature with a 1/1 counter on it, and you can tap to put a 1/1 counter on target creature. And the Guildmage cares about auras enchanting just permanence. So I'm even thinking about auras enchanting lands. Like
Yeah, I
moving
think
them,
that's a good ramp package.
potentially. Yeah, I just love that it's just cost and then colon. You don't have to tap. Why can't this just be our commander?
Yeah, why isn't this legendary?
This is like that time, Riley, where we built those. Was it like peasant commander where you have an uncommon commander? Or
Yeah.
was that pauper commander? I don't know what it was, but I think we all ended up going with like
The same.
not this card, but the Simic, some kind of Simic like mage that.
Yeah, it was from not Dissension here. Like this Simic Guild Mage is from Dissension, but this would have been from, I think, the Return to Ravnica block. One of the Guild Mages out of there, the Simic Guild Mage out of there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Yeah, but yeah, so that just goes to show you why that format never took off.
So I guess you've landed on the commander of Experiment, Kraj. I think we all agree on that.
Well, yeah. I think that that definitely synergizes best in terms of a legendary creature with the Simic Guild Mage.
Yeah, and I'm just running a quick query on other legendary creatures that care about +1/+1 counters. And of course, I mean, Kraj is the one that sticks out the most easily. And also the one that is within the color restriction of Simic. Yeah, other elves or wizards or +1/+1 counters, I'm not really seeing anything. I mean, there's like the Omnath Locust of Royal, but I'm good on Omnath, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've seen
we've had
a
stay
few
away.
deck techs
we've had
already.
enough big land energy for a while. I think.
There's Prime Speaker Zagana.
Yeah.
2 green, blue. When she enters the battlefield, with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and when she enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to its power. So a little bit of synergy there. It's also Rolesque, Apex Hybrid, Flying Trample. It's 2 green, blue for a 4/5 Flying Trample. When it enters the battlefield, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, and when it dies, you proliferate, then proliferate again. But honestly, I'm not a big fan of Rolesque in general. He just seems a little underwhelming.
Yeah, even with the update to the Commander Death Trigger thing.
It's still like meh.
Oh, you know what there is? A new commander from Zendikar Rising, Verisol the Split Current. If we wanted to go like a kicker direction, caring about +1/+1 counters, Verisol is X green blue for a 0/0, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each mana spent to cast it. And whenever you cast a kicked spell, you may remove 2 +1/+1 counters from Verisol, and if you do, copy that spell and you choose new targets for the copy. So that's a spicy new one.
Does that really, because like we don't, the thing about Experiment Crash is that the Guild Mage can help like put counters on creatures with activated abilities. Like Verisol doesn't really.
Yeah.
If the Guild Mage like put counters on, that would help with copying spells, but I don't know that that's.
Like the ways the Simic Guild Mage would work would be like, hey, we have other creatures that have counters on them, and then we move those counters to Verisol so that we're able to duplicate spells.
That's true. Yeah, definitely.
So there's a bit of synergy there. But of course, Kraj, like one of the benefits of Kraj is that obviously its activated ability alone can put counters on an opponent's creature to gain those activated abilities. But the Guild Mage doesn't generate tokens or counters by itself, right? Like it has to move them.
It's moving them around
to the same controller's permanence, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine if we went that direction, we could definitely build with creatures in mind that could distribute counters and use that kind of theme to help spread the love and allow Kraj to get all big and combo-tastic.
Yeah, well, it's it chooses its own evolution, as the flavor text says.
Yeah.
Hey.
And then the only other commander I'm seeing here that could be a contender is the Mimeoplasm.
So
the Mimeoplasm enters the battlefield. It's 2 black, green, blue for 0/0. It enters the battlefield. You can exile 2 creature cards from graveyards, and if you do, it enters as a copy of one of those cards with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to the power of the other card. So a weird, quirky commander, probably a lot of fun, but I think Experiment Kraj is probably in line with like the straight and arrow, like most synergistic with the Guild Mage.
Yeah. Although once upon a time I did have a Mimeoplasm Infect deck. That was a lot of fun.
Oh.
Not really. It wasn't really a lot of fun. But some of us go through that, that commander phase where we try Infect for a little while, and it's just nobody likes it. Nobody likes you, so you stop doing it.
I only need 10 damage and I die? That's unfair.
It's more like you need 30 damage to win the game, and everybody is immediately against you, so it's really hard.
All right.
Cool. Let's lock it in. Experiment Kraj.
The Kraj. Yep.
The Kraj.
Great.
Kraj father.
I don't think I've ever played against a Kraj deck in
Me
Commander.
neither. Can't say I've seen one out there.
It's pretty cool. And the flavor text by Momir Vig, I've definitely played against a Momir Vig deck multiple times, and it took a long time. But anyways, that's a story for another time.
Sorry, I actually have a Kraj deck in the works. Like, it's been in the works for quite some time. But I've never actually finished it. In fact, I got to the point where it was like probably a couple cards away from being done. And then I took some cards out of it because I had a different idea for a different deck. So it's like at that stage where it needs some work still. But it's sitting on my shelf just waiting for me to look at it again.
Well, don't steal our deck list, Riley. Okay?
Can't do that.
No, I'm kidding. Please, everyone, build this deck list if you do like it. So we have Experiment Kraj as the commander. We have Simic Guildmage as the secret commander, we'll say, the secret special card. Let's move on and start with the ramp package in this deck. So it's Simic, so the ramp is going to be easy, but I think it could be cool to go with the like more mana dorks that have activated abilities that we can put counters on for the ramp package as opposed to artifacts, because the Kraj doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's things like Fertilid. Fertilid comes to mind for me.
Ooh, yeah.
So Fertilid is actually recently reprinted in Ikoria.
And Commander and Zendikar Rising Commander.
There you go.
Even more recently. That's why it's 9 cents.
I mean, it is a common. It's not going anywhere. But Fertilid's nice because it's 2 and a green for a 0/0. It enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and it has an activated ability of 1 in green to remove a +1/+1 counter, and target player searches their library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffles your library, or their library, I guess. So you could be a friend, and if somebody's screwed on mana, you could be like, hey, Secret Alliance, okay, give them a land.
Yeah.
But it's also nice because it itself has an activated ability. It cares about things. It cares about removing +1/+1 counters. So with Kraj, Fertilid is inherently giving Kraj this activated ability, and you could tap to put a counter on Kraj and then activate this ability to remove a counter to get a land. So you got like a little land engine there to begin with.
Absolutely. And this deck, like, Kraj cares about creatures with activated abilities. So I'm thinking of both Somberwald Sage and Shaman of Forgotten Ways, which are mana dorks. I think they're both. Let me just. They're both 2 and a green, and they both add mana to your mana pool, but you can only use that mana to cast creature spells. So.
Sorry, we had Somberwald Mage, and what was the other one?
Somberwald Sage. Somberwald Sage is 2 and a green for a 0/1 human druid, and you can tap it to add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells. And then we have Shaman of Shaman of Forgotten Ways.
Oh yeah.
Is two and a green for a 2/3 human shaman. Tap to add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells. And it also has Formidable, so an alternate win condition where you can pay 9 and 2 green to tap it. Each player's life total becomes the number of creatures he or she controls. Activate this ability only if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. So it's biorhythm on a stick, which is again why I will advocate for biorhythm being taken off the ban list. And that's going to be my soapbox for this episode.
There's a couple others in that realm, especially ones that care about having +1/+1 counters on them. Gyre Sage is one and a green for a 1/2 that has Evolve. So Evolve is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness, then this creature put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And it has an activated ability of tap to add green to your mana pool for each +1/+1 counter on Gyre Sage. So it'll just progressively get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then also give Kraj the ability to tap for the same ability if Kraj has some +1/+1 counters on itself as well.
I can't help but thinking there's probably some combos with all these 1/1 counters and activated abilities.
100%. Totally. Yeah, Kraj is a combo commander. You get a horseshoe crab with a counter on it, and now all of a sudden Kraj has the ability to untap itself for a blue mana, and then redistribute counters everywhere. So if you have a way of tapping itself for blue mana and then untapping with horseshoe crab, if you can generate an additional mana out of that, then you've got infinite mana, and I'm sure you can figure something out as to what to do with that mana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I didn't even think of horseshoe crab.
Yeah. As a little fun one, it's an enchantment. We have New Horizons. So it's 2 of anything in green for enchant land, and when New Horizons enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and then the enchanted land taps for 2 mana of any one color.
For sure.
So we're putting a counter on something, and then the Kraj gets the abilities, and we're getting some mana ramp.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Ooh,
yeah.
What about something like even Incubation Druid? So this is another 2 mana.
Need that card.
Another 2 mana elf. So Incubation Druid is 1 and a green for a 0/2. It has tap to add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead, and it has adapt 3 for 3 green. So adapt basically means if it doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it already, then you'd put that number of +1/+1 counters on it for its activated ability. So with Kraj and Horseshoe Crab, if you've got an island out there and a counter on Incubation Druid and a counter on Kraj, then all of a sudden you can tap Kraj for 3 blue mana. If you have a Horseshoe Crab out there, then with a +1/+1 counter on it, then untap for a blue, and then just generate infinite mana, infinite of both colors, really.
So we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves here, but I did outline a combo pieces section, and I think we might as well just throw Horseshoe Crab in there
as being talked about twice already.
Yes.
Yeah, let's just put it in. I mean, it was probably going to end up in the deck anyway. None of us are adverse to a combo deck in any way, so let's just throw it in there. Let's be bad.
We won't combo. There is the card Quicksilver Elemental, since we're talking about combo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you pay a blue and it gains all activated abilities of target creature until end of turn. And then you may spend blue mana as though it were mana of any color to pay the activation costs of Quicksilver Elemental's abilities. So then we can use green or blue to untap the Kraj with the Horseshoe Crab.
Oh, yeah.
And then by paying 1 blue, if Quicksilver Elemental, if Kraj has that, we can just pay 1 mana, and even if a creature doesn't have counters on it, Kraj will still get those abilities using the Quicksilver Elemental.
Yeah, I like it. There's also in the same vein as Horseshoe Crab is a card I've never heard of before. It's Simic Ragworm. It's 3 and a green for a 3/3 worm, and its activated ability is a blue untap Simic Ragworm. So the activated ability is exactly the same as Horseshoe Crab.
As Horseshoe Crab.
A little redundancy.
Little bit, yeah, a little bit of redundancy.
Just to jump a little bit further back to ramp here. There's a couple
let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Let's get back.
Let's get back to
Let's
this.
get back. So would you guys consider the Great Henge as a piece of ramp or more of a synergy piece? Because I think that's exactly what we would want in this deck.
Yeah, we need that card. Because it's both.
It's like everything. It's, life gain, a little bit of ramp, synergy, card draw.
Yeah, but I think that because of the CMC of the Great Henge, and it seems like at least with the ramp package, it's the creature's power and toughness are pretty low to the ground. I don't know if I would put this in the ramp section. Yes,
That's fair.
Yeah.
Once we get it onto the battlefield, it will ramp, but I think it's more a synergy card to get 1/1 counters on creatures as soon as we play them.
For sure. Yeah, more like a Zendikar Resurgent with +1/+1 counters kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it is nice
Zendikar
because
Resurgent.
in a +1/+1 counter deck, like our power and toughness is likely going to be high enough to reduce the casting cost of the Great Henge. So there is a little bit of synergy there with its mana cost.
A little bit. Yeah.
But for sure, a nice ramp card and a nice synergy with +1/+1 counters is Rishkar Pima Renegade.
Mm-hmm.
And Rishkar is a 2 and a green, 2/2 elf druid. And when they enter the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And each creature you control with a counter on it has tap to add green.
Yeah, that's definitely that's a ramp card and a synergy card, but like that's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
So just so everybody's on the same page, the Great Henge only cares about a single creature, like the creature with the greatest power, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like Formidable, where it's the sum of the power of the creatures you control.
Yeah, no, correct.
Okay.
Sorry,
Awesome.
Riley, what was that card you just explained?
Rishkar Pima Renegade.
Do we take that as ramp, or do you take that as like a synergy?
Rishkar?
Well, I think it's a ramp card, but it's also a very synergistic card. But we can put it in the ramp category because it is pretty. It's 3 mana, and if you already have 2 creatures on the battlefield, it's essentially 1 mana because you get that 2 mana immediately if those creatures are unaffected by summoning sickness at that point.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, it could potentially be free if you have a battlefield full of creatures already with +1/+1 counters on them.
Oh my goodness, yeah, absolutely.
And then you can start moving things around with our guild mage.
Mm-hmm. So this probably goes without saying, but we probably put Soul Ring into this deck. It's not a
Sure.
it doesn't care about 1/1 counters, but come on.
I mean, it helps get Kraj out sooner, right?
Yep, absolutely.
It does.
That's
It's
what we
also the
want.
name of the show, so
Get it, put it in.
it goes in. I love your only artifact ramp. Talking about ramp though, do we need max hand size? We can talk about that later, but there's always Thought Vessel that we keep in the back of our minds.
Well, with Kraj, Thought Vessel is, in most, kind of like Reliquary Tower, especially if the deck isn't too, there aren't too many colors in the commander's color identity. I don't think you're ever wrong to run Thought Vessel or Reliquary Tower, but with Experiment Kraj, you can end up drawing a lot of cards. You can end up drawing your entire deck. So if you have the right cards in your deck. So I don't know. I think we should throw Thought Vessel in there just in case, just as a little extra.
Like from my perspective, I think max hand size, like infinite hand size, is a little overrated at times.
I think I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like even if you were to draw, say, like 20 cards, if you can't manage to pick 7 of those cards that will win you the game in the following turns, then
Or if you
I
can't
don't
win
know,
right
that-
there.
yeah, or you can't win right there, then I think that's kind of a challenge you need to revisit with your deck, because I don't know, max hand size, to me, I think the exercise of whittling it down to my next few turns like is gonna focus my game plan anyway, and,
No, and
discarding down is never a bad thing.
No, and it does just that exercise does make you a better player. And I I've said this before, but I think deciding what to discard is one of the hardest things for me to do, and it's been one of the hardest things for me to get good at doing.
Yeah, it's all these
but-
goodies.
I want more toys to play with, Riley. More toys.
I want all the toys. Give them.
So for ramp so far, we got 8 cards.
That's a pretty good start, and there's definitely some more like mana elves and other synergistic like dorks that can care about counters, like even like devoted druid.
I was just
Yeah.
So devoted druid is 1 and a green for a 0/2 elf druid. It can tap to add a green, and you can also activate its ability to put a -1/-1 counter on devoted druid to untap devoted druid, which is a nice activated ability to have, because the -1/-1 counter and the +1/+1 counter actually will cancel each other out. So whether you want to replenish your devoted druid, or even take a counter off Kraj and just keep using this activated ability to untap Kraj, you can likely get some nice synergy going there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think in terms of caring about 1/1 counters, I think this is a pretty good ramp package. So let's move on to the card advantage category of this deck.
We talked about it pretty much right at the top, but I think Prime Speaker Zagana is a shoe-in for...
Sure.
Yeah, just
a big dummy that draws you cards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like big dummies.
And like we'll be putting 1/1 counters on things, something will be big, and then we'll just draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, and going back to that, the pauper or peasant commander that we were talking about at the top of the show. I don't know if that's going to make it into the show. That's up to Ainsley. But we have the Zamek Guildmage. That was the card we couldn't think of. It costs Simic. It's a 2/2, and you can. It has 2 abilities. The first ability costs a green or blue. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it. So that just helps the overall synergy of the deck. And then its second ability is pay a green and a blue, remove a 1/1 counter from a creature you control to draw a card. So, that's not the most ideal situation, but it could be a way to, like, if you've run out of gas but you have a lot of mana, you could churn out a lot of card draw.
Mm-hmm. For sure there, bud. One card I have here, and one card that I was looking at for my own Experiment Kraj deck, is Fathom Mage.
Oh, I was just about to.
So for 2 green and blue, you get a 1/1 that has Evolve. And whenever a +1/+1 counter is put on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. So it only cares about counters being put on it. So even with our Guild Mage, if we're moving things on and off of Fathom Mage, that is enough to trigger that card draw. So I think that's a nice little bonus. Pay 2 in a pinch to basically draw a card.
I think that's a real nice bonus.
I really like Fathom Mage because I think people kind of disregard how the second part is worded.
Mm-hmm.
They just read it as evolve, and if it evolves, I draw a card. But it's like, no, if you have other ways of putting counters on the Fathom Mage, you're able to draw more cards. So,
Yes, sir.
And we got ways with that Simic Guildmage. We got ways.
Sure do.
Yeah,
and when and everybody, when you play this deck, you put that Simic Guildmage in the command zone with Experiment Kraj, and you're just like, you know what? I heard it on a podcast. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Another card for card draw that we already talked about was the Great Henge. Do we want to put that in the card draw section?
The Great Henge fits in every section.
It fits in every section.
Even removal. It's player removal.
I did add we have a +1/+1 counter synergy spot. I threw the Great Henge over there.
Oh, perfect. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just whatever.
Yeah.
We should just put it in each section. Just put multiple copies.
It does everything. Yeah. The Great Henge.
Yeah. What about something like Inspiring Call? This is a favorite of mine when it comes to +1/+1 counter decks. 2 and a green for an instant. It says, draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Then those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn.
You know, this is that second part is what Distant Melody is missing. If Distant Melody had that, it would be and it was an instant. It would be so much more playable of a card. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was 1 mana cheaper or 2 mana cheaper. Just make it like Heroic Intervention, but better.
Yes. Yeah, just give us a better Heroic Intervention, please.
Yeah, and don't forget the Hexproof.
Yeah. I do like the Inspiring Call. Obviously, it's card draw and also protection. Like,
yeah,
I think that's just a good card for this deck.
Yeah, that's a very good include. Absolutely.
Cool.
So there are a lot of cards that have an activated ability to draw a card, whether it's just plain draw a card, or whether it's a looting or a rummaging ability. Are those things that we want to entertain with a deck like this? Even if it's just tap to have that ability.
I think so, because then if we get that card on the battlefield and we get a counter on it, then we can also use the Kraj to do that too.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see.
Because we do have like like Merfolk Looter or Rummaging Goblin. Those are both well, not Rummaging Goblin because that's red, but
that's red. Merfolk Looter is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the very least, it's giving Kraj another way to tap itself down.
Yeah, just repeatable. I mean, there's lots of things that care about, if it enters the battlefield and you control a creature with a 1/1 counter, you get to do this thing. But we want more of specifically activated abilities with a deck like this.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Merfolk from the recent Ravnica sets? It has like Adapt.
Oh, I think it's like Benthic Biomancer or something like that.
Yeah, you got it. Pretty sure. Benthic Biomancer is 1 blue. It has 2 to adapt 1. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on the Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. So it's kind of like Fathom Mage, but we do have to discard a card.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy does only cost 1 blue.
Yeah, and it synergizes well with Kraj in the sense that you can use Kraj's ability to put a counter on it to get that loot effect. So kind of a roundabout Merfolk Looter kind of effect.
Yeah.
Of course, like the thing with Adapt is it will only trigger if the creature doesn't already have a counter on it. So don't fall into that trap of activating Adapt when you already have a +1/+1 counter on that creature, because it's not going to do anything.
Yep.
But if you want it to do something, even if it has a +1/+1 counter on it, there's a card called Biomancer's Familiar, which I think would be an interesting include in this deck. So Biomancer's Familiar is a green and a blue for a 2/2 mutant. And it says activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate, and this effect can't reduce the total amount of mana and ability cost to less than 1. And you can tap, and it says the next time target creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though if it had no +1/+1 counters on it.
Yeah, so this solves the adapt problem.
Yeah. And it also makes our Guild Mage's ability cost just green mana instead of 1 and a green.
I don't know what to call that card.
I think
Biomancer's Familiar.
Probably be in the realm of synergy.
Yeah, well, like 1/1
general
counter synergy. I think it's like a 1/1 counter synergy because yes, it does help the Simic Guild Mage, but at least where we're at now, the reducing the activated abilities cost isn't
totally relevant at this point in time.
exactly. Yeah. But it's still a fantastic card. It's like a poor man's training grounds with that extra ability. But in decks that just want to activate colorless abilities with impunity, Biomancer's Familiar is great. Training grounds is even better, but just run both. That's what I do.
Yeah. It's definitely pretty crazy how expensive Training Grounds got.
Oh my goodness! Even though it got reprinted in was it on the list or was it Mystery Boosters? It was recent, whichever it was.
I feel like it was Mystery Booster.
Are we gonna have to keep track of like the different lists? Because it's like Zendikar Rising the list is, and then like what the next standard set is the Kaldheim the list, and then we got like Dungeons and Dragons the list, and Pathfinder the list. Like I can't keep track of these lists, guys.
Yeah, like the reprint was just the list.
Okay, good. Thank goodness.
But I think like they're gonna have the thing that is just called the list, and then things are gonna migrate in and out as time goes on.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I just don't want a bunch of different set lists in addition to the sets. You know, like I'm trying. You know, we do this show in our spare time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be kind of weird if like they take a card off the list and it's like, oh, this got reprinted in the list from 2020, and it's like 2023. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh man, 2023 is gonna be great. We're not gonna have to worry about COVID or anything. I can't wait.
Fingers crossed.
Oh,
sad
man.
state of affairs.
Well, I think if they're still doing
2023.
restrictions in 2023, like there's just going to be a revolt, and it's just going to run through the population at that point. So, like long before that point, like they got, like I think we'll stay calm until maybe like spring of 2021. But like if that vaccine isn't like rolling out, at least to the old people by then. People are they're gonna start to get upset.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's get back to the deck list here. We're not gonna talk about COVID. So I, besides the card advantage cards that don't care about 1/1 counters, which is something that you should always think about. There's nothing wrong with putting a Harmonize in your deck.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that is really that really cares about 1/1 counters that we can think of?
Well, are we still talking in the realm of activated abilities with card draw?
Yeah, we're still talking about card advantage.
Just a card draw.
Yeah. I mean that a classic for tapping and drawing 3 cards is Arcanus the Omnipotent. It's 3 and 3 blue for a 3/4 legendary wizard to activated ability, tap to draw 3 cards, and the other activated ability is 2 and 2 blue, return Arcanus the Omnipotent to its owner's hand, so he can protect himself. Mm-hmm. Or if he has a counter on him, then Kraj can also draw 3 cards and also protect himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
That's definitely a good include when it comes to card draw.
I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kraj just cares about creatures because I was about to delve into the Planeswalker arena, but Kraj isn't that good.
Getting Planeswalker abilities?
Yeah, creatures and Planeswalkers. But I guess they would have to have 1/1 counters on them, and they don't.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need like a spark double to come in as a Planeswalker and put a +1/+1 counter on it instead of a loyalty counter.
Would that work?
Let's search up spark double. It enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and it wouldn't necessarily work because it automatically enters with an extra loyalty counter if it's a Planeswalker that you're copying. So, unfortunately, you don't get the choice.
Darn.
Darn it.
Come on, darn it.
Damn it, this edge case scenario doesn't work what I wanted to. What about something like Jace's Archivist? So Jace's Archivist is 1 blue for a 2/2 Vidalcan Wizard, and it has an activated ability of blue, tap. Each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So basically, like a windfall on a stick. That's repeatable. And I mean, if you have Kraj, then Kraj can activate this ability as well. I don't know if we would necessarily have any wheel synergies, but if you manage to dump your hand in a turn and somebody else has more cards in hand, then you could refill it.
So and
yeah,
and keep your opponents on their toes, right? There's nothing wrong with wheeling.
Also, if we end up putting like an Eldrazi in the deck, we can just like repeatedly use that ability to mill everybody out, and then we're still alive.
Yeah, especially with untap effects, right? And infinite mana.
Another win condition. Yeah, hopefully
That's
they don't have any
fun.
Hopefully they don't have any untapped mana and response in their deck. Imagine getting like halfway through that combo and then just getting like wrecked.
Yeah.
Hey, the game's got to end at some point.
Just scoop.
There's also a card like in a similar vein, at least in terms of the name. We just have plain Archivist, and it's 2 and 2 blue for a 1/1 human wizard, and it has tap draw card. So if you just want to get really milquetoast with it, you can throw that in there as well.
Yeah. Or another Merfolk Looter redundancy. We have Thought Courier. For 1 and a blue, you get a 1/1 human wizard that says tap to draw a card, then discard a card.
Okay, so shall we move on to the removal package of this deck?
Sure thing.
All right, so
sure, there's lots of removal in blue and green.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's like, I mean, there is some good removal, but that's sort of the thing that's a little bit lacking. Like, just, I know there's lots of good blue and green removal spells, but there aren't a lot of good just like unconditional board wipes and things like that, like mass exile effects, things like that is really what I'm talking about. But something that would be in the vein of 1/1 counters and activated abilities, at least activated abilities, would be a card I used to run in my Yisson deck, Uvenwald Tracker. It's 1 green for a 1/1 human shaman, and it has an activated ability, 1 and a green to tap. Target creature you control fights another target creature. So we do have a lot of piddly creatures so far in terms of power toughness. But, the Experiment Kraj is a 4/6, and, we're wheeling and dealing 1/1 counters, so the creatures are going to be bigger. Definitely Experiment Kraj is going to be bigger. So
Thick.
This is something, it's a thick boy. This is something that you could use to remove some creatures.
Yeah, I definitely really like it since it's an activated ability as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it fits the theme pretty well.
Heck yeah.
You got to be fitting that theme.
And I mean, like, you've got, like, if you just wanted straight efficiency, like no dinking around, you've got cards like Rapid Hybridization and Pongify, which can just destroy a creature for a blue mana. And give them a 3/3.
Beast Within.
Yeah, Beast Within is even more flexible. Obviously, it's 3 mana, but you can hit any permanent, which is nice. So,
personal favorite of mine for artifacts and enchantments, Crows and Grip. And there's going to be some of those, it.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to break synergy. Like, obviously, if there is, things like the Uvenwald Tracker that you suggested that kind of fit within the theme. I always like to kind of stick to the theme as much as I can, but at the end of the day, you need a removal package. You need some form of interaction, especially if you're playing like a grindy deck, which I imagine this deck will be fairly on the board and fairly grindy.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and speaking of this being a grindy deck, and this deck is going to want to have a large board presence, so you're going to want to have things like counter spells to protect your board.
Yes.
But I think I'm getting ahead of the,
like, depending on how you're using them, they could definitely be removal and they can definitely be protection.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they can be both. So this just being a 2-color deck, I think you could definitely get away with just running good old fashioned counterspell.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of negate in Commander, especially when it's a creature focused deck. Like my biggest worry is like non-creature removal, so like board
Yes.
wipes and things like that. So a negate, I think it would be right at home in a deck like this.
Yeah, Swan Song is also really good for board wipes. They're usually instants or sorceries.
Yeah.
I love Swan Song.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think a really cool card for this deck would be Plasm Capture.
Plasm Capture. I don't know that card.
It's kind of like a mana drain.
It's 2 green and 2 blue. You counter target spell. At the beginning of your next pre-combat main phase, add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. Where it was the spells converted CMC.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is like that. Yeah, that is very cool.
Right?
Yeah, 4 mana drain basically.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have no concerns about budget, just slap a mana drain in there, Bob's your uncle.
Yes.
We also have the All-Star Fierce Guardianship.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the new commander, 2 and a blue for an instant. If you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost and counter target non-creature spell.
We've talked about a few counter spells, so I think if we have a removal section, a counter spell section, and then a protection section, we're kind of good, I think.
Obviously, Cyclonic Rift was just reprinted in Double Masters, so it's cheaper than it's been in a while. And that's always a great include in any blue deck. Until
I like that card. I don't know.
No, it's a
it has a
card.
high salt score.
I think
Okay, guys,
it's
people
underrated.
think it's
Yeah, it's I think the problem with cards like Cyclonic Rift and is that the philosophy of it is maybe in design, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here, is they were thinking that it would be cast by a player who needed to get back into the game. But I think what often happens is players cast it as a win condition, but it doesn't kill your opponents. And so you're casting it to expect your opponents to concede the game. And what can end up happening if you don't have the game in hand with that Cyclonic Rift cast, then you can end up sitting there for another 30 minutes to an hour to who knows how long. Yeah. So I think I think it's just it can I think that's where the card creates feel bads, is that it should be in an ideal world you'd cast a Cyclonic Rift and your board state is so good that your opponents just concede. But the thing about conceding is your opponents don't have to concede. So
yeah, but I guess that's
where the problem lies.
Like it would be like the 1-2 punch of Cyclonic Rift on your opponent's end step, and then swing in for lethal to finish off the game, which I think is an important thing to have in a game of Commander where the games can be exceptionally grindy, and at the end of the day, everybody's got to go home, right? So,
but I think that's where the feel bads come from with Cyrift as well, is that it's 7 mana to win the game. If you have a good board state, you pay 7 mana and you just win. And I think people don't like that.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't like seeing Cyrift.
I think the instant speed kind of gives it an extra edge is because of the play sequence that I just mentioned. It feels almost like it's unavoidable, but at the end of the day, if you're that concerned about Cyrift, I mean, there are ways to interact with it.
Yeah, you could counter it.
Counter
it. Yeah, so it's not like it has split second, but I don't know. Just pick your cards up, go to the next game.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I have a problem with Cyrift. I'm just, I just think that I don't think the cards themselves create the salt score.
It's just the scenario that you're describing. It's like I'm in a completely defensive scenario and I'm using this to save my life, but in the process setting everybody back to square one, essentially.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, I mean, it's not nearly as bad as Upheaval would be if Upheaval was legal in Commander. But Upheaval, like if you've ever played Vintage Cube, Upheaval definitely gives people a sense of false security in the sense that you have all of these resources in your hand, but I mean, you have all your resources in your hand, you have nothing on the battlefield, so it turns into play a land for the turn and discard like 9 cards from my hand. It's an incredibly powerful effect, but it also gives you that sense of like, oh, I have all these resources I can still use. it just is going to take time, and that's what I guess the downside of Scryfall can be, is either it wins you the game on the spot, which some people might have an issue with, or it just draws out the game to an exceptionally longer period than it needs to be.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we could do a whole episode about
Cyclonic Rift.
about Cyclonic Rift in particular, but just about our philosophies when it comes to Commander and Magic gameplay in general. But I got
one more counterspell.
Oh, great! Let's do it.
Fuel for the Cause.
Oh, what's that?
It's 2 of anything and 2 blue to counter target spell. Then you proliferate.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just get a little pump. It's on theme.
Pump it up.
I like that. Oh, and you know what? One removal spell I just remembered, Reality Shift. If you want to run that, it's a classic. It's 1 and a blue for an instant. Exile target creature, its controller manifests the top card of their library. So they put the top card of their library onto the battlefield face down. It's a 2/2 creature, and if it is a creature card, they can turn it face up at any time for its mana cost.
Yeah,
I do like that because it does exile. So
yeah,
great card.
Great curd.
All right. Do we want to touch on any additional protection? I know we briefly talked about a little bit during card advantage with Inspiring Call, but what other forms of protection could we look at?
Well, I think it's
intervention.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Running that. But in turn, like the counter spells can also act as protection.
For sure.
Guys, what do you think of Plaxcaster Frogleg?
Yes, I love that card.
What the hell is that?
So it's 1 of anything, a green and a blue for a frog mutant. It's a 0/0. It has Graft 3. So this creature enters the battlefield with 3 1/1 counters on it. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may move a 1/1 counter from this creature onto it. But it has the ability to pay 2. Target creature with a 1/1 counter on it gains Shroud until end of turn.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic card.
That's actually really cool. I like that.
Notably, Graft is an ability that affects all creatures entering the battlefield. So if you wanted to, somebody plays a juicy target that you want a +1/+1 counter on for some reason, you could graft a counter onto their creature and then, give Kraj that activated ability. I mean, obviously Kraj has the activated ability of putting a counter on a creature. So there's that as well, but it's just a little bit of redundancy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know that Graft was any creature.
Yeah, annoying to play online because triggers all the time.
I bet.
A pet card of mine is Evacuation, but obviously we don't want to be returning our creatures to our hand and losing those precious 1/1 counters. So if we are getting attacked, I think a good substitute is Aetherize. It's 3 and a blue for an instant. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands, because we don't want to be blocking with our creatures. So this could be potentially a good way to save ourselves from lethal damage, and it's an instant, so it's perfect.
I love Aetherize. You can always it's fun at the table to like bluff the Aetherize. Like someone's like, "Oh, if you attack me, I'll Aetherize,"
and it's
you have it.
It's totally underplayed in Commander, as well as Evacuation, which is also an instant. They're both totally underplayed cards. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll Aetherize you.
I don't make me. So I think those cards coupled with the counter spells we talked about is a pretty solid protection package.
Very solid.
And in that case, what categories do we want to move on to next? Do we want? I have tutors here, but do we want to be tutoring for anything? In particular, anything that helps us with 1/1 counters?
Well,
I think if we work on the combo pieces and see what we're going to be doing, then we can look at the tutors, because so far we do have a couple creatures in there. So like right away, I think of Green Sun Zenith would be great.
Yeah, and I mean Green Suns can only get green creatures, so doesn't get no horseshoe crab, but Court of Calling is another classic.
Yeah.
So I think being primarily creature based, having one of those creature tutors would be appropriate if you wanted some redundancy, or some way to get that combo piece out. Can we talk about a +1/+1 counter synergy here?
Yeah.
Sure.
I have Evolutionary Escalation, and this is a personal favorite of mine in my Halar the Firefletcher deck, but I think it would be perfect here as well. It's an enchantment for 1 and a green, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, and 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature an opponent controls. So a way to share the love and distribute some +1/+1 counters, and also just give you a beefy dummy at the end of the day that, you know, put the 3 +1/+1 counters on your Fathom Mage and draw 3 cards, you know, stuff like that.
It's a cool card too, because like every time you're getting 3 counters, but then you can distribute them between all of your opponents, so you're still getting more benefit.
Yeah, and in theory, like, I mean, you could be, it is 3 +1/+1 counters, so it's not like you're gonna be super thankful for spreading too much love, but at the end of the day, like, you're probably targeting something that has an activated ability that Kraj can take advantage of. So
Yeah,
just a nice little piece there, a little bit of redundancy. I mean, in the realm of tutors, obviously I wouldn't consider clone effects tutors, but it is a form of redundancy. A nice clone that could be considered is Alter Ego or Altered Ego.
Yeah.
It's X2 green blue for a 0/0. It says Altered Ego can't be countered, and you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with X additional +1/+1 counters on it.
Oh yeah, I remember that card.
So at a baseline, it's like an uncounterable clone effect. But if you even put just 1 additional mana into it, like make it a 5 mana clone, you get a +1/+1 counter out of it as well. So
Yeah.
a little bit of redundancy, a little bit of synergy.
In terms of combo pieces, I guess we don't need more. We probably don't need more redundancy in terms of infinite mana, but just because it's in the colors, we do have Pili Pala, which has an activated ability, and Grand Architect, which is an infinite mana combo, and mana of whatever colors we need.
I think it's a good infinite mana combo to have in the deck.
Okay, yeah, great.
I do like it.
Yeah. And sort of going back to, I don't know if this works in combo pieces, but it might just be like 1/1 counter synergy or possibly even ramp. But because we have so many activated abilities on creatures in this deck, 1,000-Year Elixir would be a really good include. It's 3 mana for an artifact. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste, and you can pay 1 to tap it to untap target creature. So even that ability could get you could get some infinite stuff going, especially with like Kior's Follower, which can untap a permanent. So that could definitely be an include. I'm not exactly sure what category we'd find it in, but it might just be in just all around good stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you could probably argue it could be like part of the +1/+1 counter synergy stuff, or maybe even just, I don't know. I don't know if you'd consider that a combo piece, but definitely a synergy piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the realm of protection, I didn't even think of this, but just Lightning Greaves, you know, it's great. You get Shroud. Yes, you wouldn't be able to target it with 1/1 counters, but you would be able to activate the ability of that creature immediately. So it you know, it is kind of a boring card to talk about, but you know, it is ubiquitous.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's a good card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another one in the realm of +1/+1 synergy, especially if we're giving our opponents +1/+1 counters on their creatures, is Cytoplast Manipulator.
What is that?
2 blue, 2 blue for a 0/0 graft to Human Wizard Mutant. It's got an activated ability of blue tap to gain control of target creature with a +1/+1 counter on it as long as Cytoplast Manipulator remains in play. So just a way to steal some of your opponent's creatures that you've given +1/+1 counters to, especially if they've got a nice activated ability and you don't want them to have that activated ability. You just take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
A couple of things that would help with combo, especially infinite mana, would be Freed from the Real and Pemin's Aura. So Freed from the Real is 2 and a blue for an aura enchant creature. You can pay a blue to tap enchanted creature, or you can pay a blue to untap enchanted creature. So you put that on well, I guess Kraj. And Pemin's Aura is 1 blue for an aura enchant creature. Pay a blue, untap enchanted creature. Pay a blue, enchanted creature gains flying till end of turn. Pay a blue, enchanted creature can't be blocked, can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn. And you can pay 1 colorless, enchanted creature gets +1/-1 or -1/+1 until end of turn. Untap. Yeah, that's what we really care about is the untap. The rest of them are kind of
Yeah, for sure. Another potential combo piece is a card from Modern Horizons. Surprise, surprise. Farmstead Gleaner. So this is a 3-mana Scarecrow. It's a 2/2. And it says it doesn't untap during your untap step, but it has an activated ability of 2 and untap to put a +1/+1 counter on Farmstead Gleaner. So if you have a way to give Kraj an ability to tap for 2 or more mana, you've got an infinitely big Kraj on the table now. And you could probably figure out something to do with that, whether you want to generate infinite mana and then distribute it amongst your whole team with your guild mage, and then swing in for potentially lethal. I would hope so. It could be a fun little combo.
Yeah, and like with all the infinite mana scenarios we're talking about here, like you could always put in a cards that make everybody draw X cards, or cards like Blue Sun Zenith or Stroke of Genius, which target a player to draw X cards, and you could kill players that way. That's just kind of one thing you could do with infinite mana in these colors.
Yeah. Ooh, another classic I almost forgot was Forgotten Ancient. It's 3 and a green for a 0/3 elemental. It says whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Forgotten Ancient, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1/+1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. So just another way to distribute counters to wherever you want, including your opponent's creatures if you need to. But yeah, this guy's going to get thick as the turn cycle goes on, and is usually one of those cards that people target because it makes your team huge.
Yeah, he's as thick as the turn cycle is long. Am I right?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got 1 tutor. I mean, in green, you do have access to other creature tutors like Worldly Tutor or which is card disadvantage, or like Natural Order, but you have to sacrifice a creature. And there are others. And we do have, in terms of removal, we do have some instants and sorceries. So you could always throw a Mystical Tutor in there, but it's definitely not on theme. But should we move on to the next category? Like, do we have anything else in terms of what we've already talked about? Or should we just move right on to I have commander redundancies here, but I feel like we've taken care of that for the most part. But is there anything else? Is any other cards that come to mind that would help put 1/1 counters on creatures we control?
Just another tutor, one that I really like. Oh, never mind.
Never mind. I don't like it.
No, it doesn't work. I'm just a dum dum.
Oh no, you're good, Eric. Oh, you know what? A card I forgot about for protection is Spike Weaver. It was just on the list. It's 2 and 2 green for a 0/0 spike. It comes into play with 3 1/1 counters on it. You can pay 2 to remove a 1/1 counter from it and put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So, it synergizes there with the Kraj. And you can pay 1 to remove a 1/1 counter from Weaver. Creatures deal no combat damage this turn. So if you can keep putting a 1/1 counter on it and you have that 1 mana open, you're good.
That's cool.
Oh, yeah.
What was that one more time?
Spike Weaver from
Spike Weaver.
From Exodus. It's like, when are we gonna get the Spike tribal commander? Come on, Wizards.
Yeah,
Who
what?
knows? We still got some more spoilers to see from Commander Legends.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, they're gonna put spikes in there.
Spikes and pirates. That's what they're going for.
What do you guys think of Sage of Hours? So it's 1 of anything in a blue for a 1/1 human wizard. It has heroics. So whenever you cast a spell that targets it, put a 1/1 counter on it. But you can remove all 1/1 counters from it. For each 5 counters removed this way, take an extra turn after this one.
That could be spicy. I definitely like that card a lot just for the spice value.
Yeah.
And like Kraj is going to potentially have a ton of counters on itself, and it's not going to be that hard to take extra turns.
Could be really sneaky too, because if you can play this, say Kraj has like 20 counters on it, play this, put a counter on it, take them off Kraj, you take 4 extra turns. Like,
yep. Or
Yeah,
you do
and
that Farmstead Gleaner combo plus Sage of Hours to just get all the turns and probably lose all your friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think you're going to lose your friends by playing a Kraj deck, but you might. I also
that's pretty.
Also like Seedborn Muse is kind of boring, but the ability to put all those counters or activate those abilities on everybody else's turn is gonna really accelerate your game plan.
Yeah, for sure. Man, even just something like a nice role player like Scavenging Ooze might be worth putting in just as like a nice little removal / synergy piece.
Yeah.
Scavenging Ooze, 1 green for 2/2 with an activated ability to pay a green and exile a card from a graveyard. And if it was a creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on it and gain 1 life. So giving the Ooze its own +1/+1 counter and giving Kraj that ability. I mean, you wouldn't need the redundancy for that ability necessarily, but it could put counters on itself with that ability.
Oh, what about an alternate win condition using Simic Ascendancy? It's
Yes.
It's green.
I was gonna bring that up.
It's green
Yes.
blue for an enchantment, and you can pay 1 green blue to put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So already I'm into it. And whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy at the beginning of your upkeep. If Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. I love alternate win conditions. Just putting it in there
Slam
for the flavor, I think is great. Oh, and this is speaking of Seedborn Muse, I was trying to think of that hybrid cycle from I think it was like Eventide or that time period, but Merc Fiend Liege. So it's 2 and 3 Simic hybrid mana for a 4/4 horror. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. And you untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. So not quite as good as Seedborn Muse because you don't hit, you only hit creatures, but this is going to be a creature heavy deck with activated abilities. And again, you're going to get to do that on each other player's on tap step, so it's going to have relatively the same effect.
Yeah, and you get a nice little anthem out of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do like the Merc Fiend a lot, actually.
So even if you don't want to activate abilities, if you did something like Herald of the Secret Streams, which is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 Merfolk Warrior, creatures you control with 1/1 counters on them can't be blocked. If you want to do attack and then be able to untap, so you could leave your creatures up to block and then activate the abilities at the end of that player's turn. just so they'd untap again, so they're available to block is fantastic. I'm sort of living in like magical Christmas land and thinking about all my creatures on the battlefield with everything I need, and there's just no cards left in my deck because I'm just wheeling and dealing. But I think both of those would be a good include. And I just never get to play with Murkfiend Liege, and it just looks like it's having a great time. So the land that I quickly looked up was
just as a little side note, we did hit 55 cards so far, so we're getting close to
an wow
deck, actually.
Look at us. Yeah nice. Can we build a deck or what?
Yeah, just throw a Walking Ballista in.
Boom, done. That's actually a good include.
Yeah.
Especially with all that mana, baby.
Exactly. Like
I think that's just
you get the Farmstead Gleaner combo. Yeah.
Actually, speaking of alternate win cons, if we're going with the Walking Ballista, we should also throw a Triskelion in the deck.
Yeah, why not? I love Triskelion.
Man, why not?
Sure.
I was playing. I beat Chandelar the other week. Oh man, I love Triskelion. So good.
Riley's like, I'm going into a cave and I get a Black Lotus. No big deal.
Yeah. I walked across like a random graveyard in Chandelar, and they're like, "Oh, you found a Black Lotus." I'm like, "Oh, great, sounds good."
I'll
put this in my mono green Stompy deck.
I wish that would happen in real life.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, walk into a graveyard and find a Black Lotus. Sure,
dude. I walk past graveyards all the time. It's crazy.
Any Black Lotuses?
So, moving on to the lands part of this deck, the first land I thought of was Llanowar Reborn. So it enters the battlefield tapped, unfortunately. You guys know how much I hate that. But it taps for a green, and it has Graft 1. So it enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may move a 1/1 counter from this land onto that creature. And like Eric said earlier, it can be a creature you don't control, which is fun. Mm-hmm. There's another card that is... there's a couple of cards that are similar, a couple of lands that care about 1/1 counters. So I think one of them is... Let me just find it. Llanowar Reborn is what I think I'm thinking. No, it's Oran Reef the Vastwood. Llanowar Reborn is something else. But it also enters the battlefield tapped, so double tap here. It taps for a green, and you can put a 1/1 counter on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. So, going back to earlier in the episode, if you do want to help somebody out and they've got a bunch of green creatures, you can put 1/1 counters on their creatures too.
If you're talking about Oran Reef the Vastwood, there's also a Novagen Heart of Progress.
Oh, yeah, that was going to be the next card I suggested. I love this card. I never get to play with it or have seen it played.
Yeah, it does not enter tapped. You can tap it for 1 colorless, but then it has the same ability as Oran Reef Vastwood, but you have to pay a green and a blue to have creatures enter the battlefield with the 1/1 counter. Yeah, but
it's better than the Vastwood because it's all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn, not just green creatures, which is nice.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
What about if we go all the way up to Zendikar Rising? What about the modal double-faced cards? So we've got Turn Timber Symbiosis, which is 4 green for a sorcery that says look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. If it had converted mana cost 3 or less, it enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And on the flip side, it's a bolt land. So it gives you that flexibility in the early game to play it out as a land drop. And I mean, the bolt land, it's fairly minor in Commander to the point where I would just consider this part of your land slot.
Yeah, I think that's a solid include.
And even something like Vastwood Fortification might be worth considering. It's just a green mana for an instant that says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and it's a land on the backside that enters tapped and it can tap for a green. I obviously wouldn't want too many tap lands in the deck, but having that flexibility and having a little bit of synergy with our deck, it might be worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also thinking of Minamo, which is Minamo School at Water's Edge. You can tap it for a blue mana, or you can pay a blue to tap it to untap target legendary permanent. So that could just help out a little bit more with untapping the Kraj in those turns where you're doing a lot of tapping and untapping and just need a little bit extra help. And it's great because it doesn't come into play tapped, and it taps for a color that you're going to need.
Okay, Riley, what was the land that you talked about recently?
Yeah, so it's Vastwood Fortification / Vastwood Thicket.
Oh, it's so thick.
Also, like, Seagate Restoration's not bad as well.
Yeah.
For talking about those lands.
Yeah, it's very little downside. Like in the late game when you're potentially flooding out, it's always nice to have that flexibility of being able to play it as a spell and get a little bit of extra value out of it.
Heck yeah. And what was that land you said, Kevin?
Oh, Minamo School at Water's Edge.
Yep.
It's just
I like that card a lot.
It's just at the water's edge. Yeah.
Right at the water's edge.
I don't know that there's anything else in terms of 1/1 counters that come to mind for me. There's that Commander land. I think it's Forge of Heroes, but
yeah.
It only cares about commanders specifically.
Yep.
So,
pretty minor effect for a colorless land.
Yeah, and like Kraj already gets the effect of the creatures with 1/1 counters, so he doesn't it doesn't need to have 1/1 counters on it.
Yeah, and a similar card would be like Opal Palace, which is like a color filtering land that when you use the color filtering, pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color of your commander's identity. But if you spend that on your commander, you get a +1/+1 counter on it for each time you cast it from the command zone this game. Which I don't think the focus is to put counters on Kraj himself.
No,
it's to get it on other creatures, which those lands don't necessarily support.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is one of my new favorite cards, Cave of Temptation.
Oh, what's that?
So
Paupertron.
You can tap for you can tap for a colorless. You can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 4 and tap it to sacrifice it and put 2 1/1 counters on target creature.
Okay.
But you can only activate it as a sorcery, Eric.
Yeah, and we could always throw Temple of the False God in this deck, no big deal.
No, stop.
No hard feelings if anybody runs Temple of the False God in their decks. Eric, I know it's still a big card for you. It's whatever. It's all good.
I run Temple of the False God in my trade binder.
I definitely still have it in my Commander League deck. I don't think I took it out yet.
Well, why would you? It's you're gonna need that. Your deck is so low to the ground that you're gonna need that.
Oh,
mana.
totally.
Yeah.
You're gonna need that ramp on turn 5.
Yeah, boy.
Or get screwed on turn 1 through 4.
The other one that I think we should throw in here is Karn's Bastion.
Oh, that's the it taps for a colorless, or you can pay 4 to proliferate. Is that it?
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, just
counters on things.
Yeah, just as a redundancy to because with this deck you might just end up beating face and just being able to do that, and especially with a Seedborn Muse effect or a Cura's Follower. I don't know for Satyr Wayfinder also untaps a land. I don't think we put those cards in the deck specifically, but that could just help with Karn's Bastion just on every turn cycle to put more counters on. So by the time it's your turn, you can start swinging again. That could definitely. And
then of course,
work.
if we're just making some creatures with more counters on them, it's more counters that we can move around with the Simic Guildmage.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Or more cards that we can draw with the Zamet Guildmage.
Well, I think that's a pretty strong place to start. Obviously, if I was sitting down and building this deck, I would weigh these options a lot more and probably find some weird niche cards to add in as well.
Yeah, you always do, Riley.
But that's just the joy of deck building, is just like finding these weird cards that I want to play with.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's a great place to start, especially if anybody wanted to take these ideas and run with them. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, and in terms of the rest of the land base, there's lots of great Simic dual lands, and you could the fetch lands. You got it made in the shade. Don't forget about islands and forests. All right, don't forget about those are like the vegetables of a deck.
Yeah, eat your vegetables.
Eat your vegetables, absolutely. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good shell for a deck. We're going to have a deck list available in the show notes, but I hope you haven't looked at it yet, because that's not the point of this episode. You're not supposed to follow along.
Major spoilers.
Major spoilers, absolutely. So I think with that, we're gonna bring this episode to a close. Let us know if you enjoyed this sort of different approach to our Decksplained episodes, and you can do that by commenting wherever you're listening to this, or DM us on Instagram, or email us. You know the email address. Yeah, I guess we haven't talked about Magic news in a long time. But anyways.
Spoilers are happening.
Spoilers are Commander Legends. Spoilers are happening. But anyways, thank you all for listening, and thank you to our editor Ainsley for the work that she does, and thank you to Riley for joining us once again on the show. Ooh. And we'll be back next week with another episode. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing our Commander Legends set review starting it next week. It might be the week after that. We'll just have to see how all this shakes out. But for the time being, just thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for sitting by with us building the deck.
Thanks, Hughes.
Bye, everybody.
Turn one soul ring.